Step out of the vehicle. Now. The command cracked through the rain before the man behind the wheel even had time to kill the engine. He had been on that street 1,000 times. Same block. Same glass building. Same security gate easing open under a pale gold lamp. It was nearly 9:30 at night, and all he'd been thinking about was getting upstairs, checking on the overnight team, and making one last call before heading home to his daughter. The city was slick with fresh rain, the sidewalks shining under red brake lights, the lobby of the tower glowing warm against the dark. It should have been an ordinary stop at the end of an ordinary day. Instead, the police cruiser came in hard from the corner, tires hissing on wet pavement, beams flooding the black sedan in white light. The man in the driver's seat, Andre Holloway, froze with one hand still on the steering wheel. 42 years old. Clean suit, loosened tie, laptop bag in the passenger seat. A fatigue only people carrying entire companies around in their heads could understand. He had spent the day in board meetings, contract calls, and a difficult conversation with a hospital chain that was about to cut hundreds of supply jobs if his company didn't fix a logistics breakdown by morning. He wasn't out looking for trouble. He was arriving to solve one. The officer approached fast, one hand already near his weapon. Hands where I can see them. Andre lifted both hands slowly and turned his face toward the flashing lights. Officer, is there a problem? You match the description of a burglary suspect. Open the door from the outside. Andre glanced at the tower ahead of him, then back at the officer. This is my office. Did I ask for your life story? The officer snapped. Open the door. The building's front camera watched from above the entrance. A security guard behind the lobby desk had already stood up. Across the street, two valets outside a closed steakhouse paused under their awning and looked over. Small details. Nothing dramatic yet. Just the first witnesses to a moment that was about to get much worse. Andre stepped out carefully, rain tapping the shoulders of his coat. He kept his voice controlled. My wallet is in my inside pocket. My ID badge is on the seat. The officer ignored both and shoved him against the car. The sound of Andre's body hitting the metal was louder than anyone expected. A woman walking her dog stopped cold on the corner. Spread your feet. Andre did. Officer, I am cooperating. The officer pushed harder, forearm across Andre's upper back. Then stopped talking. His name tag read Brennan Kell. Mid-30s. Thick-necked. Aggressive in the casual, practiced way of a man who had done this before and expected no consequence for it. He yanked one of Andre's arms back, then the other, rough enough to wrench a sharp breath out of him. Andre clenched his jaw. You're hurting my shoulder. Should have thought about that before tonight. Before tonight. That was the first sign that this had never been about a burglary suspect. A second cruiser rolled up. Another officer stepped out, but did not intervene. She stood near the hood and watched. Kell had an audience now, and instead of calming down, he expanded. Men like him often did. Power was performance. Andre looked toward the lobby. The security guard had started walking outside, radio in hand. That man works here, the guard called. That's Mr. Hollow. Back inside. Kell barked without even turning. Now. The guard hesitated. Back inside unless you want to be detained too. The guard stopped where he was, stunned. Andre's badge lay visible on the driver's seat, clipped to a leather strap. His initials were embossed on the bag beside it. The parking sticker on the windshield matched the building. The gate arm behind the car still stood open, having recognized the vehicle. Every visible fact on that wet street supported Andre's explanation. Kell didn't check any of it. Instead, he reached into the car, grabbed the badge, looked at it for less than a second, and tossed it onto the pavement. The valet across the street raised his phone. Andre turned his head. Why would you throw my identification away? Kell leaned in close enough for only a few people to hear him. Because guys like you always have fake credentials when you're trying to look like you belong. The words hung there, ugly and unmistakable. The second officer looked away. The woman with the dog pulled out her phone too. Andre's breathing changed. Until that second, he had still been trying to believe this could be resolved with patience. Misunderstanding, correction, apology, done. But the line had been crossed. Not just legally. Not just professionally. Morally. Openly. In front of cameras. You need to call your supervisor, Andre said, his voice lower now. Immediately. Kell laughed. You don't get to make demands in cuffs. He spun Andre around and slammed him chest first onto the hood. A gasp rippled from the sidewalk. The impact cracked Andre's phone loose from his hand. It skidded across the wet pavement and stopped near the curb, screen still glowing. By blind luck, the side button had been hit on the fall. The camera was recording. Kel didn't notice. He was too busy leaning into the moment, too busy enjoying how one accusation had given him ownership over another man's body. Andre grimaced, cheek pressed against cold metal. There are cameras everywhere. Good, Kel said. Then everybody gets to see what happens when you resist. I am not resisting. Kel drove a knee into the back of his leg and forced him down. By then the lobby doors had opened again. 3 employees from the overnight floor had come down after seeing the cruisers outside. One of them, a young operations manager named Lena Ruiz, stepped onto the sidewalk and stared in disbelief. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's Andre. Not Mr. Holloway. Andre." The kind of familiarity only came from working directly with someone. She started forward, but the security guard caught her arm. "Don't. They'll turn on you too." Across the street, more phones were out now. A cyclist stopped. A rideshare driver pulled over. Rainwater trickled along the curb around Andre's fallen phone as the red and blue lights painted the tower's mirrored front in violent color. Kel finally hauled him upright and searched him, emptying his pockets onto the hood. Wallet, key fob, AirPods, business cards, a folded hospital contract, and a photograph of a little girl in a graduation gown. He picked up the wallet and opened it. There it was. State ID, corporate access cards, black card, driver's license. Everything clean. Everything real. For a fraction of a second, he had an exit. Any decent officer would have taken it. Instead, he doubled down. "You can buy fake IDs anywhere," Kel said loudly, for the crowd, for the other officer, for the story he had already committed to. "Doesn't prove anything." Andre turned his head and looked straight at him. His face was wet with rain, not fear. "You know exactly what this is." That was when the 3rd police vehicle arrived. Not a patrol unit this time. An unmarked black SUV. The driver's door opened, and a man in a charcoal overcoat stepped out fast, scanning the scene with the cold recognition of someone who knew immediately that disaster had already occurred. Behind him came the building's general counsel, then the head of security. The man in the overcoat stopped dead when he saw Andre in cuffs. Every inch of the street shifted. Officer Kel noticed it too, but too late. The man took 2 steps forward. "Why is he restrained?" Kel straightened. "Active investigation, sir. Please stay back." The man's expression hardened. "Do you have any idea who that is?" Kel answered with the confidence of a man who had never truly been challenged. "A possible burglary suspect." The man gave a short, disbelieving exhale. "That is Dorian Vale." Kel frowned. The head of security stepped in, voice rising now. "Founder and chief executive of Vale Meridian Health Systems. Owner of this building. Employer of 2,000 people in this city." Lena covered her mouth. The second officer finally looked directly at Kel, but the real blow landed a second later. The general counsel spoke with the clipped precision of someone who had already shifted into legal mode. "And as of this morning, Mr. Vale was appointed by the governor to chair the state commission reviewing misconduct and use of force procedures in urban police departments." The rain seemed to vanish. The traffic noise dulled. Even Kel's posture changed, just slightly, like his spine had suddenly lost its certainty. Dorian Vale. Not Andre Holloway. Not a suspect. Not an intruder. Not a man trying to look like he belonged. The man who owned the property. The man whose company had just funded the emergency wing expansion at St. Catherine's. The man whose name sat on scholarship plaques across the city. The man the governor had publicly praised 12 hours earlier for bringing oversight, accountability, and reform-minded leadership to state institutions. And Kel had thrown his ID in the street, pinned him to a hood, used a racial slur within earshot of witnesses, and put him in cuffs on camera. For the first time that night, Kel looked afraid. He moved toward the handcuffs. "Sir, if there's been a misunderstanding." Dorian stepped back the instant the cuffs came off. His wrists were red. His shoulder hung slightly wrong. His voice, when it came, was calm enough to be terrifying. "No. Don't touch me again." Nobody moved. Then Dorian looked down at the items scattered across the hood, at his badge in the gutter, at the phones pointed from every direction, and finally at the unmarked SUV where a dashboard camera had also been running. "You had multiple chances to stop," he said. "You chose escalation every time." Kel opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to explain, maybe to invent. Dorian cut him off. Save it for the investigators. By midnight, the first clip was online. It wasn't the full story at first. Just 38 seconds from the valet's video. Kel shoving Dorian into the hood while bystanders shouted that he worked there. Then another angle surfaced from the woman with the dog, capturing the thrown ID and the slur. Then the security camera footage from the building's entrance leaked before dawn. By sunrise, local reporters were standing in front of the tower. By lunch, national outlets had picked it up. Officer assaults prominent black executive outside his own building. That headline spread fast. The truth spread faster. Because once the city started looking, more evidence came loose. Dorian's dropped phone had recorded nearly the entire encounter from the curb, audio. Clear enough to catch every command, every threat, every second of false narrative. The second officer's body camera contradicted Kel's initial report within minutes. He had claimed furtive movement, noncompliance, and attempted flight. The footage showed none of it. He had claimed the suspect matched an active burglary bolo. Dispatch records showed no such suspect had been broadcast within 10 miles of that block. He had claimed reasonable suspicion. What he had was a black man in an expensive car entering a building he assumed he had no right to enter. Then Internal Affairs found something worse. Kel's cruiser camera had captured the minutes before the stop. He had been parked half a block away, watching the gate. When Dorian's sedan pulled up, Kel could be heard saying to his partner, "Let's see if this one says he owns the place too." Not suspicion. Selection. Not policing. Hunting. The department tried, briefly, to control the burn. A press conference was called. The chief announced administrative leave and promised a review. But the review had already escaped them. Civil rights groups had the footage. Reporters had the dispatch logs. The governor's office, blindsided that the new chair of a police oversight commission had been brutalized before even holding his first meeting, requested a state inquiry by afternoon. By the next day, the U.S. Attorney's Office confirmed it was assessing whether Kel's conduct violated federal civil rights statutes. Then the complaints surfaced. For years of them. 2 unlawful detention allegations. 1 excessive force claim quietly settled by the city. 3 civilian complaints marked, not sustained, despite witness statements. A traffic stop involving a teenage honors student dragged from a car at gunpoint. A neighborhood merchant shoved during a compliance inspection. Each incident had been dismissed in isolation. Looked at together, they formed a pattern too obvious to ignore. And once the public saw the pattern, the city lost control of the narrative completely. The overnight employees who witnessed Dorian's arrest gave statements. The security guard testified that he tried to identify Dorian and was threatened. Lena Ruiz turned over building access records showing Dorian's car had entered that garage hundreds of times before. The valet submitted his video. The woman with the dog spoke to 2 networks in one day. Even the second officer, under mounting scrutiny of her own, admitted Kel ignored evidence that should have ended the stop immediately. Dorian did not flood the airwaves. He gave one statement outside the courthouse 6 days later, shoulder in a brace, his daughter standing behind him with his sister. "What happened to me was not unusual," he said. "That is exactly why it matters. The only unusual part is that this time, enough cameras were watching, enough records survived, and enough people refused to lie." That line detonated. Because he was right. This was not just about one man being humiliated on one street. The stakes had moved. Personal to legal. Legal to institutional. Institutional to national. The lawsuit came next, filed in federal court with astonishing precision. Unlawful detention. Excessive force. Racial discrimination. Defamation. Civil rights violations. Failure to supervise. Deliberate indifference by the department. Attached exhibits included body cam transcripts, dispatch logs, prior complaint histories, use of force reports, medical evaluations, and frame-by-frame stills showing the exact moments when legal justification collapsed and misconduct began. The number hit the city like a blast wave. $12 million. Not symbolic. Not negotiable theater. A figure designed to hurt. Discovery made it worse. Emails showed supervisors had repeatedly cleared Kel despite warning signs. Training deficiencies surfaced. Complaint review boards were shown to have dismissed citizen statements without interviewing witnesses. A use of force auditor had flagged Kel 9 months earlier as a high-risk officer requiring intervention. No intervention happened. Then a grand jury was convened. When the indictment came down, it was final in a way no suspension ever could be. Officer Brennan Kell was charged with official oppression, falsifying a police report, and felony civil rights violations. The city terminated him the same morning. His pension review was opened before sunset. The union tried to defend him for one news cycle, then backed away when the dashcam audio was released in full. He was arrested by investigators from the very building where he once swaggered through internal interviews untouched. The image of him walking in a suit, no badge, no cruiser, no authority left to hide behind, became the visual summary of the entire case. But the fallout didn't stop with him. The police chief resigned 3 weeks later after city council hearings exposed how repeated misconduct complaints had been buried under vague administrative findings. 2 supervisors were demoted. The complaint review process was transferred to an independent civilian office. Mandatory body camera activation rules were tightened. Racial profiling audits were ordered across every patrol district. The state commission Dorian was appointed to chair expanded its mandate and subpoena power after lawmakers cited his case as proof the system could not be trusted to police itself. Then came the settlement. $12 million, approved in a public vote. Every member of council knew the city would lose at trial. The evidence was overwhelming, the witnesses credible, the history indefensible. The settlement included more than money. It required public release of sustained misconduct findings, outside review of repeat offender officers, and a binding reform timeline monitored by the state. Dorian accepted it without triumph. He returned to the same tower months later through the same gate, where Kell had stopped him. Cameras waited outside. Reporters called his name. He paused before entering and looked back at the street. The rain was gone that day. Clear sky, bright pavement, ordinary traffic. A city pretending to move on. But some moments do not let institutions move on. Some moments brand them. Brennan Kell had made a calculation the second he saw a black man in a luxury car near a building too expensive, too polished, too powerful for his imagination to accept. He assumed control would protect him. He assumed the uniform would outrank the truth. He assumed the man in front of him had no identity that mattered once he was pushed against steel and framed as a threat. He was wrong on every count. He lost his badge. He lost his career. He faced criminal prosecution. His name entered public record beside the misconduct he thought would disappear into another report. The department that shielded him was dragged into federal scrutiny. The city paid millions for the violence of one officer and the silence of everyone who excused him before that night. And the man he tried to reduce to a suspect became the reason an entire system had to answer for itself in daylight. That is what real accountability looks like when the cameras don't cut away, when the witnesses don't back down, and when the truth arrives too late to save the people who chose abuse over restraint. If you believe officers who abuse power should face real consequences, comment justice and subscribe.